going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal Spaz Phoenix, the YWC reality check here with a little bit of a different kind of NXT review. It's going to be the review of this week's whatever the hell day it is, but I'm gonna tell you right now off the cuff. Ha ha ha. I'm recording this a couple days before this week's NXT because I didn't do last week's NXT review, and I didn't do last week's NXT review because of the way things are in the world right now. And I'm not going to belabor that point. I am hoping to have somebody else on here later this week to talk about, you know, wrestling and where wrestling is right now, and we can't do anything, and there's no audience, and etc., etc., etc. But the bottom line is we can't have wrestling in front of an audience, and the WrestleMania announcement that has absolutely blown my mind that I can't really recover from. And then we saw the empty arena Raw, the empty arena SmackDown, the empty arena Dynamite, which it deserves some credit in its own right. But those of you that know me know that NXT is the flagpole of this channel. It's the tentpole. It is what it is. I couldn't bring myself to watch NXT last week because it made it real, if that makes sense. And this is something, again, I'm going to be addressing this in a later video. People are like, "Oh my God, with all the things going on in the world right now, why would you focus on how it affects wrestling?" And the fact of the matter is, you have to build up the distractions. I'm a movie guy. I can't go to the movies right now. Other people I know are sports people. There's no sports to watch. Now those things will come back eventually. Now what's happening with wrestling is exactly the opposite, and it is trudging on, and it's sad. So this thing that we would normally watch to distract us from the bad things happening in the world are the thing that is reminding us of what's bad in the world. And I think a lot of people sort of had a laugh when there was the first empty arena SmackDown, when they did the empty arena Raw, because people want to make fun of those shows anyway. But when it got to Wednesday night, and this is not the time for me to make fun of AEW or AEW's fans or whatever the case may be. As I said, they put on a good show. When we got to Wednesday night, and the wrestling heart beats on Wednesday night, doesn't it? When it got to Wednesday night, it sunk into wrestling fans, and it's like, no, this is real now. It's not the shows that we want to make fun of. It's the shows that we want to love. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I didn't watch NXT. I didn't watch. Well, I heard that it was going to be all video packages and highlights and no live action anyway, so I didn't feel like I was missing much. I actually watched Dynamite live, and Dynamite was good for what it was. They had the wrestlers there as the crowd. Daly's place was lit up with pyro and all that sort of thing. But I would rather not watch this thing that I love rather than see it remind me that it's not there. I'm not my typical bubbly, you know, over-exaggerated self, because it's not time for that. And as I say, I'll say it for a third time now, I plan on doing a video with somebody else so we can talk about how the worldwide health issues are affecting us as wrestling fans in our little wrestling bubble. But I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to try and get my excitement up a little bit, because I did go back and watch the well, not NXT from the 18th, but what they put out on the 18th was highlight packages, hype reels, getting us ready for NXT TakeOver, which isn't happening anymore, in WrestleMania that's going to be in an empty performance center. But I wanted to look at this through the perspective of, you know, what it was supposed to be. You know, we got stuff leading to TakeOver that was supposed to happen. We got stuff that was leading to WrestleMania, when WrestleMania was still happening in the, the Don John Stadium, or whatever the heck it is. And really all they did was focus on three things. And the first thing is the Ciampa Gargano feud. The second is the evolution of Finn Balor. And the third is some focus on Rhea Ripley, Charlotte Flair, the importance of having the NXT Women's Championship defended at WrestleMania, and why that's such a big deal, and how we got there. So what I want to do is sort of use what they showed us as a framework, and I just want to walk down memory lane with you guys, because that's that's going to do us more good than just talking about all the wrestling we're not getting and how things are not okay right now, because we're going to talk about that in another video. We did as we always do, which is kind of a shot in the gut. We replayed the week before's NXT with the Ciampa Gargano brawl in the PC. Keith Lee, fucking things around the North American Championship picture, all that sort of thing, like we always do, which was, again, it was a blessing and a curse, because it was even in the Performance Center. So we saw what a Performance Center full of people looks like, or we reminded ourselves what a Performance Center full of people looked like after seeing it empty for SmackDown and Raw, which was really interesting. We then go to Tom Phillips, and they're in the WWE studios in front of a green screen. They're just sort of talking about how the night's going and how this WrestleMania season's not going to be like anything we've ever seen before, and trying to make that sound like a good thing when it's not. But then they move forward into the first bit, and I will say at some point I may cut off this video, and I might have to do it in more than one chunk. So if you're watching this and that's going to bother you, or especially if you're listening to this in an audio form, please find the Spaz Phoenix podcast on all your audio podcasting platforms. If you're listening to this on a podcast, you want to find me on YouTube, look up Spaz Phoenix. You guys know the drill by now. So if I cut out after this and come back to talk about the rest of it later, I hope I'm able to sew that together into something coherent. But we started, and it was all Ciampa and Gargano narrating their feud, and it's very, WWE is they're the video package company. They're very, very good at this stuff like that. So they started with footage from both of them in the PC when they made their tryout. They were randomly paired off at their WWE tryout. They fought each other in their tryout match, and they were both rejected at the same time. And just seeing little bits of footage, they didn't show a whole match. They didn't show a whole, PC training session. But I didn't know that. I knew that they had become friends as they became part of the WWE machine, and we'll get into that in a second. But I didn't literally know that they fought each other in their first tryout match. That's really, really cool. The fact that they came together, the fact that they became friends and stayed friends after that, the fact that they were both rejected at the same time, and they said, they gathered a bunch of the tryout guys together and said, there's not enough contracts for everybody. We've only got a contract for one of you. And I thought they were going to say that one of them got a contract and the other one didn't. But they didn't. They both got rejected at the same time. I want to know who got that one contract. It's just that little extra missing bit of trivia. But they were rejected at the same time. But then they lingered around, and they lingered around until the Cruiserweight Classic. And you guys know I follow the Cruiserweight Classic on this channel. I think it was a lot of fun. One of the best things I've seen, honestly. And Ciampa went and he said somewhere in the voiceover of this part of the video, one of them, I think it was, says Gargano was in it but Ciampa wasn't, and he went to Triple H or William Regal or whoever was putting it together and said, why don't you put me and Johnny in the first round? We'll show you what we can do. I'll go out right away. It's fine. It was the last match of the first round of the Cruiserweight Classic, if my memory serves me correctly, and it was interesting for me, because a lot of the way I watch wrestling is my background, how I feel about people, what I've gotten to know about them over time, my investment in them, etc. Always, 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 Jeff Hardy is going to be my example for that. Jeff Hardy winning his first WWE Championship in a, let's be honest, not the greatest match in the world on a B pay-per-view was, for me as a fan, it was a WrestleMania moment. So watching these two guys who I don't know, and literally getting hyped up and drawn out through their match, and Gargano obviously won and went on in the tournament and whatever, and that becomes redundant after a while. But these guys, for two guys that I didn't know, these guys laid it out on the Cruiserweight Classic and beat the ever-loving shit out of each other. I really do. I don't want to come across like I'm trying to be a wrestling journalist, because I'm not, but I really do. If you didn't watch the Cruiserweight Classic, go back and watch this match. Obviously, it's the last match in the first round. We got Gargano versus Ciampa, and we have what's now become that iconic moment, because it's been leaned on so many times, and it's been mentioned so many times since then, is that moment where they've had the match, they've shown what they can do, and they're both in the ring, kind of like arms around each other. Neither one of them can barely stand up, but it's one of those moment, and I don't think I can ever remember a time where I was so drawn in by a match between two guys that I don't know. And that says something, because you guys know, normally, when somebody's about to come to NXT, famously when Shinsuke Nakamura came over from New Japan, and I was like, okay guys, tell me what I need to know. More recently with somebody like Kushida, when Daniel Bryan was new, and everybody was like, oh, well, you need to know this, and you need to know this, and you need to know this. Same thing with CM Punk. Famously, when I asked my co-host Guapo, who's now my AEW guy, hey, I heard about this new girl Ember Moon that's coming to NXT. What do I need to know? And all he says to me is, she does a stunner from the top rope. Obviously, everybody and their mother was telling me something about like guys like Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, the guys in the Undisputed Era, whatever. I usually reach out to you guys to tell me why I should care. Tell me why I should be invested in these particular characters. Ciampa and Gargano were just guys in this tournament that I decided to follow. And watching this match, and I may have said it in my review, it was a while ago, I don't remember, this could have been the final. Actually, no, that's not true. I was going to say TJ Perkins won the whole thing, didn't he? We see how well that went. I was about to say I couldn't remember who won because this match sort of stuck out. What sticks out from the Mae Young Classic is, other than the please sign Cedric moment, which was also awesome, and we see things are going incredibly well for him, obviously. But it was this match in the first round. And all these other guys that are doing other things all over the world now, Kota Ibushi and Will Ospreay and all those guys that I don't follow, but I know I've seen them. And I know that they're doing things elsewhere in promotions that other people I respect care about, but it's not my thing. But to see Johnny Gargano, and especially to go back now, Ciampa's got the short beard and he's got the little mohawk thing going on, and they sort of look identical, except for Johnny's always got the vest with that weird like not smiling smiley face on it. This match, you got to go back and watch it, because you've never seen, or I've never seen, these guys kick the crap out of each other and then almost immediately like they fall into each other's arms like they're brothers in wrestling right as soon as the match is over. It's a really cool moment. Now we fast forward from there to DIY forming in NXT and how they could really be something. They were kind of floating around and that sort of thing. And I remember these guys beating the crap out of each other, and I'm thinking that moment at the end, it's the better version, it's the much better version of Sheamus and Cesaro kicking the crap out of each other before they became the Bar. It's the much better version of that. And I remember slowly starting to think, and I'm like, who do these guys, because we do that too, who's going to be the next Undertaker? Is it going to be The Fiend? Is it going to be Aleister Black? Is it going to be this, that? And it's like, who are these guys reminding me of? Who are they I couldn't describe it to you at the time, but they reminded me of the Hardy Boys if the Hardy Boys had a ground game. Now I love the Hardy Boys. I love Team Extreme, Matt and Jeff and Lita and the whole thing. They're not really known as, they're spot guys. They're really good spot guys. They're charismatic spot guys, enigmatic spot guys, you could say. But they touched the same part of my wrestling fandom as the Hardy Boys did, even though in all reality they're nothing like the Hardy Boys. It's just I like watching these guys wrestle. And anybody that they fought for a while became people that I hated, because these were the guys that, later on down the line, Johnny Gargano started becoming, the heart and soul of NXT. But these guys as a team were the heart and soul. The whole DIY thing, like DIY stands for do it yourself. And I know Tucker and Otis have sort of adopted the blue collar worker moniker, but these guys were the genuine article for that. And they touched the crowd, and they weren't the same. They were a team without being the same. They didn't have that thing of back in the day where every tag team looked like twins or anything like that sort of thing. And it was good. And they went to take over Brooklyn, and they had a great match where they did not win the tag team titles, which the power of them as a team was shown in the reaction to that loss, that failure to grab the gold for the first time. But selfishly, Selfishly, it led to TakeOver Toronto 1, which I was at. And yes, I'm going to do that. I was there thing. On a side note, let's just talk about WWE Shop releasing a WrestleMania shirt this year that says I wasn't there. I simultaneously hate them for doing that and kind of want the shirt. I don't know. Maybe there's something wrong with me. They win the titles at TakeOver with that double submission, that side-by-side double submission spot that we all know because it's been in every highlight package since, and it's amazing. And the Revival, I mean, where are the Revival now? But it was really good, and it was one of those wrestling moments, and we all have wrestlers that we like. I mean, I like The Miz, I like Jeff Hardy, whatever. You know, I think guys like MJF don't exist without a guy like The Miz. I think guys like, I don't even know what the comparison would be here, but there are certain wrestlers, and I know for a lot of people it's Daniel Bryan. It's not for me, but I recognize it in other people. There are certain wrestlers out there that can give you that feeling of you won with them, if that makes sense. And I was there. I got to be there. The crowd reaction that night when they won the titles was huge. When the tap out went down, the roar in the Rogers Centre in Toronto, I can attest to it. The TV doesn't do it justice. The genuine, the cliche we use all the time of the crowd in the palm of your hand, that was so loud. It was really loud. Now, remember, I was at WrestleMania 18 when Hulk Hogan got that ovation when he was about to fight The Rock, and that ovation lasted like 4 minutes. I won't exaggerate. I won't say it was like that because nothing spans the globe quite like Hulkamania. But for any NXT show that I've been to, that is by far the loudest reaction. And I'm talking about putting it up against, you know, Finn Balor in his main event prime, Sami Zayn in his main event prime, Kevin Owens in his main event prime in the golden days of NXT. I would put the reaction to them winning those titles up against anything else. Ciampa and Gargano, they reign as tag team champions. The injuries and the aches and the pains start building up in Tommaso Ciampa. Take over San Diego. They lose the titles to this brand new beast of a team, and they're led by Paul Ellering, and it's the Authors of Pain, now known as the AOP. And it was just like, here's our guys, and it's weird because it's like DIY. We're kind of like that little hobby shop that you used to go to on the corner after school to get your baseball cards or whatever, and then they have to go out of business because a Walmart sprung up right next to them. That was really what it felt like. Here's some big, bad, cookie-cutter WWE guys, and I don't say that in a bad way towards AOP, but WWE likes their big stars. They're big, therefore they are now the champions. San Antonio, they lose those titles. Take over Orlando, they fail to regain them. They go on to take over Chicago, and they lose the ladder match, which leads to that heartbreaking moment where everybody was putting snapshots of this moment next to that picture of Ralph from The Simpsons, where they say, you can tell exactly when the fans' hearts broke in half, and it was when Tommaso Ciampa turned on Johnny Gargano on the rampway, when he became the post-credit killer of NXT. Remember when all his attacks happened after the little signature showed up at the bottom of your screen? The beatdown between him and Johnny Gargano, sort of breaking their team and breaking up any further attempts to get the tag team titles back, obviously. And what killed it for all of us was he did that initial beatdown and then left for surgery, which was fine. He leaves for surgery. Gargano goes on a bit of a losing streak, but then he gets himself back up to being able to face Andrade, and he fails. And Ciampa returns for the beatdown. Ciampa costs him that second title because he was so angry. He was so incensed by that loss to Andrade that Ciampa had cost him that chance at the real gold, that he put his career on the line to get a second shot at Andrade and that championship. And obviously that was also cost him by Ciampa returning with the crutch and all this sort of thing. Brings us to take over New Orleans in that non-sanctioned match, and it had to be a non-sanctioned match because Johnny Gargano wasn't an NXT wrestler at that point. Firing angles in wrestling are always a little bit lame. NXT managed to pull this off. pretty damn well. But it is the non-sanctioned match between Ciampa and Gargano, and this was basically to get Gargano's job back. And this is where all the little bits of bastard, you know, you want to talk about AEW, you want to talk about bastard pack. This is where we really started getting the bastard Tommaso Ciampa heel. This was the era where he had no music, and the boos from the fans were so loud that NXT could get away with a creative gamble like having him have no music, and the crowd knew exactly what it was for. This is where the crutch and the knee brace became signature weapons of both of these guys, and it was good. As you're watching this, though, as you're watching, like, you know, what happened at the beginning to them being a team, to them falling apart, you really start thinking about the progression of matches. You think of their tryout match in the PC, just trying to get into the company, to my first introduction to them being in the Cruiserweight Classic. Two guys I don't know that, like I say, managed to get my attention the way that they did, to now this TakeOver match that has all the proper build of now two guys that I know, and I know where one came from, and I know where the other came from, and I know where the feud came from, and I know what's happened, and this was a really, really good thing. And obviously, Gargano wins his job back in that match. Gargano and Ciampa go at it again at TakeOver Chicago in a Chicago street fight, and Ciampa gets his win back. This was, this is where people started saying, or I remember people started saying, like, okay, these guys are having all these wild, crazy matches, but we know they're fantastic wrestlers. When are they going to have a wrestling match? Ciampa versus Black happens for the NXT Championship, and Gargano is still obsessed with the two of them. And I meant to say this back when Johnny fought Andrade with, sorry, I'm a little all over the place, and my notes are few and far between. The thing with Andrade, the thing with Gargano going after Andrade, is it felt like Andrade was out of place. Andrade was the champion. Andrade had the trophy that Gargano wanted. That was his goal. That was him moving forward. But because the turn had happened, and there'd been no repercussions from the turn, we all thought, like, it's great that he's getting a title shot, but he should be fighting Ciampa. That's where the story is. Andrade, as the NXT champion, felt out of place facing Johnny Gargano, and it was the same thing here with Tommaso Ciampa getting a shot at Aleister Black for the NXT championship. Gargano is incensed. Gargano, feeling what I just said, he can't get his mind off Ciampa. He tried to run in and cost Ciampa the title, ended up costing Black the title and handing it to Ciampa. And Ciampa's victory isn't just that he became the champion before Johnny, but it was basically that he fucked with Johnny's head so much that Johnny had actually just handed him the championship. And the psychological storytelling of that was fucking great. At TakeOver Brooklyn, Gargano and Ciampa fought again in a last man standing match. Ciampa retained. He tried to handcuff him to the stageway, or the displays on the stageway, and he thought, okay, if I can handcuff you, if I can beat you down, there's no way you can. And then he went for that one last shot that took him right off the edge of the stage, and he took himself out once again. They start playing up this story that Johnny Gargano is becoming his own worst enemy, and Ciampa retains the NXT championship, but Gargano goes in a different direction, because now at this point they've introduced the North American championship, and Gargano, who's bordering on, like, not so much of a babyface himself anymore, goes up against Ricochet and beats Ricochet for the North American championship. Gargano versus Ricochet, again, even though Ricochet is the guy in the championship match with the championship, Ricochet feels out of place to me. Maybe people disagree with me, I don't know, because it was a great match. But he feels out of place facing Gargano because he's not Ciampa. And this is where you start worrying about this. Are these guys going to be tied to each other forever? Or is it always going to be like, if they're not facing each other, we feel like they should be facing each other? Now, he picks up the North American Championship, and for a split second, both members of DIY, or the team formerly known as DIY, have titles. But Ciampa has to relinquish the NXT Championship to get his neck surgery after 238 days reigning over as the best man in NXT. Now we take the vacant NXT title to TakeOver New York, where Gargano is now facing Cole. Cole is the other side of the equation now. Gargano wins the 2 out of 3 falls match against Adam Cole to win his first NXT Championship match. And Ciampa, of all people, shows up on the ramp with Candice LeRae, and Tommaso Ciampa and Gargano all celebrating and there's the big emotional reunion and whatever. TakeOver 25 comes around and Gargano drops the title back to Cole. Ciampa returns to face down Adam Cole on NXT on, I think, somebody can correct me down in the box below, I think this was their first full episode of NXT on the USA Network, when Balor debuted at the beginning and Ciampa made his return at the end. And I think I signed off my video review that day. I either started the video or finished the video with AEW is fucked. You started with the return of Balor to NXT and you ended with the return of Ciampa from injury going straight for Goldie, straight for the NXT Championship. And this is I talked before about the no entrance era, the crutch and knee brace era. This sort of became, the era of Ciampa almost turning into Gollum, looking for the precious, looking for Goldie. It was also, in the eyes of the fans, it was the Daddy's Home era, where Daddy's Home became the thing that ran out in the entire arena, which was an interesting little turnaround, because as they mentioned in all of this, they mentioned that when they were a tag team, there wasn't a lot of DIY chants. There was a lot of Johnny Gargano, Johnny Wrestling chants. There was a lot of DIY chants, I should say, but there were no Ciampa chants. There was the occasional Psycho Killer. They did the back and forth Johnny Wrestling Psycho Killer, but there was not a huge vocal voice in their tag team scenarios chanting just for Ciampa like there was for Gargano. We go to TakeOver Portland, and this is where it all comes down, because he came back. Daddy's home, the whole bit, but you're going to have to wait a little while because Daddy's got to go to war. And we talk about the everything that happened at the War Games and Survivor Series weekend, which we're going to talk a lot more about later on when I'm talking about the Rivley situation, but we don't go over it as much here. They go to War Games, he wins War Games. He wins War Games with that insane, he's just come back from neck surgery, and he hits that insane air raid crash off the top of the War Games cage. And yes, AEW, that is the War Games cage, through the table to get the win for his team. It's all good, but then we go and we get back into the title hunt. Obviously, DIY, in the midst of all of this, in the midst of all their struggles, get back together for Worlds Collide and have a fucking match of the night, early 2020 match of the year contender, DIY, the reunited DIY taking on Mustache Mountain. If you haven't seen that match, once again, I know Worlds Collide wasn't a takeover per se. If you have not seen DIY versus Mustache Mountain, go back, pause this video, go back and watch it. You will not regret it, I promise you. Which brings us to TakeOver Portland, where Balor had made his heel turn at this point. He made his return the same night as Ciampa did. Quickly after that, he made his heel turn. When we were really looking at the main event scenarios in NXT, and we're thinking, okay, you got Balor, you got Cole, you got Gargano, you got Ciampa, you got Riddle, who's chomping at everybody's heels. We didn't know it at the time, but Velveteen Dream was on his way back. Matt Riddle is there. The main event scene was really starting to pile up. And Ciampa was going for the title, but Gargano was the victim of the Finn Balor heel turn, the slow metamorphosis from Finn Balor into Prince Balor, into this awesome heel asshole thing that he's got going on, and we'll talk about that in a while as well. But Gargano loses to Balor in, I hate to keep going to hyperbole, but Gargano Balor was like the unexpected match that we all wanted. I used to talk about the format for an NXT takeover, it was always like a men's title match, a women's title match, a tag title match, and 2 other matches. Now, when they brought in the UK title, that title became one of the other matches. When they brought in the North American Championship, that title became one of the other matches. But this worked in that last other match. It's Punk versus Orton at WrestleMania, whatever year that happened, where that match was awesome in its own right, but it was also awesome in the sense that there was nothing attached to it. There was no stipulations. It was no special referee. There was nothing on the line. There was no title. There was nothing else that needed to make the match good. You just knew that it was going to be Gargano versus Balor. In fact, for Portland, the first NXT takeover to not be associated with a WWE pay-per-view of some description. I know they attached one to Backlash, which isn't a big 4, but this was the first time NXT got to fly completely on their own, completely unattached from a WWE pay-per-view, and on a Sunday night. This was huge, and the very first match that they signed to that card was not a title match, was not a tag title match, was not even a women's match, while the women's division was becoming the weapon to beat AEW over the head with, that they were. The match that they signed to this match first, to start getting the tickets sold, to start getting everybody's attention, was Gargano versus Balor, and that was an amazing move, because that was an amazing match, but Gargano lost. They had to solidify that new heel Balor. If he had done this and lost in his first outing at TakeOver, you know, his big grand return to TakeOver too, let's not forget about that. He lost to Balor, and that we thought that was going to be it for the night. And then we went on to the main event to see Ciampa go, and he was going to go get Adam Cole, and he was going to fight through the Undisputed Era, and he was going to get Goldie back, and there was all a big melee, and the referee was taken out momentarily, and Ciampa was about to hit him in the face with the belt, because that's what he deserved, until Johnny Gargano shows up at the end and not only keeps him from grabbing the belt, but smokes him in the belt with it himself. Low blow, last shot. Adam Cole leaves, obviously still with the championship. We were expecting last week to get the Adam Cole longest reigning ever NXT championship bollocks celebration. Obviously that didn't happen because we got this show instead. The big thing is Cole retains his title. Now Gargano is heel. Now you've got a pissed off babyface Ciampa and a really weird kind of... I don't really like what Gargano does when he's heel, because he does this really like emo thing. They did that great interview with Mauro Ranallo, which everybody hated because they thought it was distasteful, and I thought it was distasteful in all the great storytelling ways. And Mauro Ranallo, to his credit, gave himself to that segment, and that might have been hard for him. I don't know, but it all went to that brawl that they did in the PC and the announcement that these guys were gonna face at TakeOver Tampa, which apparently isn't happening now. But it's such a long... I mean, that's where it just trails off, because like that's just where we left off. But the way these guys narrated this entire thing, the way they spoke so highly of people, of each other in some regards, and so like venomously in other parts, and you know what? I should have seen that coming from him. I know what kind of person he is. I can't even get mad at him. We're all just trying to get ahead. They created something between the two of these guys as a tag team and as enemies. You know, what's that pay-per-view from a million years ago? You know, good friends, better enemies. But they've got something with these guys, and I know people are getting sick of it, and I know people are saying that, you know, they're really dragging this out. But Gargano and Ciampa, if you need any further proof of it, look at the title matches that they were in, that the champions in those matches felt out of place because they weren't the other person. Like I say, Gargano versus Ricochet. Ricochet felt out of place in that match, even though he was the champion. Adam Cole versus Gargano. Adam Cole felt out of place, even though he was sometimes the champion in those scenarios. Aleister Black felt out of place because he wasn't Johnny Gargano. Andrade felt out of place because he wasn't Ciampa. That doesn't happen. You don't get that resistance from fans and that unease for them to move on to their next step if what these two wrestlers have between themselves isn't such a special thing. And it's sort of bittersweet, and it's kind of a punch in the gut, because this is what I want to see the Wednesday before we go to TakeOver that's not happening right now. So I'm very excited. and I'm waiting for things to get good again, because this will be good. I don't care if it's a month, 2 months, 5 months down the line. This will be good at some point. It's on the shelf right now, and I don't know what they're doing. And as I record this right now, I don't know what's happening this week. Apparently, they've pre-taped some matches at Full Sail or whatever the case may be. Obviously, in front of no audience. But yeah, it's weird because I'm glad TakeOver got postponed. WrestleMania in the empty Performance Center is going to be surreal, and there's a big part of me that really wishes that they had postponed it, to be perfectly honest with you. But the hindsight of that is that TakeOver has been postponed, and hopefully they hold over TakeOver until they have an audience, and that's all I can say. There is more to talk about in this show. There's going to be a jump cut here because I do need to step out for a minute and get some other shit done. I have rambled on this far longer than I thought, but it was good, and it's if you're spending time doing good things, it's not good time wasted. So I will see you in a little bit, right about now. What's going on, everybody? We are back. Sorry for the jump cut. Like I say, this one might be a little bit more cut up than usual, but after all the Ciampa Gargano history, which was a lot of history, it was pretty much half the show, was it not? We go back to Tom Phillips, we go back to Triple H there in the WWE studios. Sorry, I keep touching my face, which is what I shouldn't do in these current times, but it is what it is. My face is itchy. Triple H puts over Finn Balor. Tom Phillips puts over Finn Balor as much as he can. And Triple H has some interesting comments because he's like, I've always liked Finn Balor. I've always seen him, but he's always seemed really, really comfortable. I've never seen him be the prince that he could be. And when he came back to NXT, it wasn't so much the shock of the return, but the shock of his actions. Now, they go into this video package about Finn Balor, and I like the fact that it was about Finn Balor specifically, whereas we just came off this package on the history between Gargano and Ciampa. To have this focus solely on Balor was a nice change of pace for a show that was all video packages. And it really does, it intersperses between his video promo and NXT's video promo. Part of it is just like, we are NXT, here's one of our superstars, here's a highlight reel type thing. And then there's what I would call his promo, which is sort of everything from his perspective and his slant on things. But it shows his first debut, quickly shows the introduction to the Demon, winning the title, his first title at Beast in the East, becoming Superstar of the Year, etc. Then he starts voicing it over. And he takes us back to 2014, talks about how Prince Devitt was recognized as the best wrestler in the world, and NXT does what NXT does. They sign the best talent in the world. They sign Prince Devitt, and Finn Balor is born. I've proven all over the world. Now I come to NXT, and I prove it again. I prove it against Nakamura. I prove it against Kevin Owens. I prove it against Samoa Joe. I prove it by picking up the NXT title and holding it for 292 days. And there's a lot of like hotshot images of him in these matches that he had with these people, specifically Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe and Balor had a really good dynamic back in the day, because Balor really does, even when he wasn't the Demon, he sort of played this sort of larger than life. I hate that they overused this on Raw, because he really was the extraordinary guy that did extraordinary things, versus Samoa Joe, who was just this constantly steamrolling force. And that dynamic that they had, especially when they got around to having their cage match. I forget where that was. Somebody tell me down in the box below, because they didn't spend too much time on that. But Nakamura, Owens, and Joe, the matches with Owens as well were pretty good. And it just, seeing all these highlights of Finn Balor, obviously it reminds us what we loved about Finn Balor, but it reminds us of what we loved about Nakamura before he was, being managed by Sami Zayn, by Owens, before he became like a comedy guy. Not that he's not good at that. And Joe, when he could maintain some momentum, as it hasn't been on the main roster. But then they flip the script. They turn over onto the next chapter. They talk about Raw drafts Finn Balor. Finn Balor was a first-round draft pick because, much like NXT, Raw wanted the best, and on his first night he beat Cesaro, Owens, and Rusev in a 4-way match, and then went on the same night to beat Roman Reigns. I remember that. I remember that feeling that we all get when we lose our NXT favorites to the main roster, and it's like a mini funeral. And I think I even did one year at the draft. I think I started off one of my videos with like a Walking Dead style in memoriam to all the people that we had lost to the main roster. But I came out of that Raw, and call me foolish, it is what it is, but they put him over Cesaro, which is no big deal because Cesaro never wins anything. They put him over Owens, who's had a good run in his own right. They put him over Rusev, who doesn't really, go anywhere. Really weird storylines. But then at the end of the night, to have it culminate with Roman, who's like the Cena of our generation, and to have him be the one that's going on to SummerSlam to face Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins as prominently as he's seen. And you always thought that like this could be the exception. I've said before, like the rumor that people that from NXT that go to the main roster are always trashed isn't always true. Alexa Bliss is obviously, I'm a fan of Alexa Bliss, but she is way better off on the main roster than she was in NXT. In NXT, she was managing a boring tag team. Now, I say a boring tag team. Buddy Murphy has gone on to do a couple good things. He went on to have that amazing moment in Australia where he won the Cruiserweight Championship. He was a great Cruiserweight champion. Blake is part of another boring team now in the Forgotten Sons. But Alexa Bliss was basically their little goth cheerleader in the corner with doing the Freddy Krueger shtick. Now, her on the main roster, multi-time champion, tag champion. She's, doing the talk show bit. Now, is she the best wrestler in the world? Absolutely not. Is she utilized to the best of the abilities she does have on the main roster? Yes. Was she on NXT? No. And Alexa Bliss is sort of what I hold up as not everybody was made for NXT. And some people are made more for the main roster. I look at somebody like a Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin, whose whole shtick when NXT felt more like an indie was that he hated the idea of being an indie guy, belongs on the main. He's a dickhead. He's a heel in the way of JBL. I mean, he doesn't have nearly the real life heat that JBL has, but he's in that regard, and he found himself on the main roster. He never found himself on NXT. Like, let's be real for a second. But Finn Balor was an NXT guy through and through, and when you saw this, he was introduced that night. He won a 4-way that night. He beat Roman Reigns in the main event on his first night. This was one of those times where you thought they might not fuck up this NXT guy that I like. He went on to SummerSlam versus Seth Rollins, and he won the Universal Champion, becoming the first Universal Champion. Now, I wanna say something that's a little less popular here. That represents the huge weight that WWE was willing to put on his shoulders. Because yes, in amongst all this, there was the introduction of the Universal Championship, the fruit roll-up belt that everybody hated, and the belt doesn't mean anything now because it's gone from part-timer to part-timer, and all the things you can say about the Universal Championship now are all entirely true, and I can't take that away. But what it meant in the moment, this is back before SmackDown was the SmackDown on Fox multi-billion-dollar shit show that it is now. This was back when Raw was still the flagship show. Vince McMahon had a stranglehold on his thing, and not only was he going to make Finn Balor the brand new champion, first ever champion on his flagship show at the top of the company, he was going to do it at the second biggest pay-per-view of the year. They call SummerSlam the WrestleMania of the summer, the biggest party of the summer, etc. So, of all the times that we say that, WWE doesn't push the guys properly. Now, it was debatable, like the fact that he came out as the Demon right away and it didn't really build to it like it did in NXT. It didn't quite come off the same way. No, absolutely not. I'll give you that. But it was pretty amazing to see that this guy that we were fearful of was going to get this title shot. And then in that 24 hours, you find out about, like, he fucked up his neck, he fucked up his shoulder and back and all that sort of thing. He had to come back out and give it up the next night. And immediately afterwards, the next whoever it was that picked it up next and next and next were immediately making fun of him because he only held it for 24 hours. Like, oh, I'm the new longest reigning Universal Champion, all that sort of thing. But it was the highest of highs for NXT fans that still saw Finn Balor as somebody carrying that NXT alumni flag, like that flag I got right behind me over there, into the Big Four pay-per-view. And getting the big belt. It was sort of he wasn't an NXT guy anymore, but it felt like an NXT win, and to the very next night have to see him give it away and then disappear for 9 months for rehab was heartbreaking. And then that's when we slipped into the WWE main roster that we knew. That's when we slipped into the, you know what, we know he's popular, we'll put him out there, we'll keep putting him in feuds because people want to see him, but we're not ever really gonna do that again, are we? But then they make a good point. They feuded him with Jinder Mahal, and everybody was like, why? And they feuded him with Corbin, and everybody said, why? They feuded him with Lashley, and everybody said, why? But if you look back, and I didn't think about it this way until you saw the video package, he did pull decent, and notice that I'm saying decent, not great, not 5-star, he pulled decent matches out of guys that we wouldn't even have bothered to see if their matches were decent. So he did do something good with them. He did make them all better. It was on a different size scale. It was the Shawn Michaels, put him in there with a broomstick and the broomstick will look good thing. He made them all look better. And then we got to the 2019 Royal Rumble, and he was the little guy that was going to be sacrificed to Lesnar that year. That role had previously gone to AJ Styles, Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins, all these guys. I don't want to say that are out of the indie mold, because they're not. I don't want to... If there's a positive side to the vanilla midget stereotype, and there isn't, really, so I hesitate to use it, but all the guys that sort of fit that mold, that smaller, super athletic, dynamic, high-flying, multi-diverse style wrestler, Brock Lesnar has amazing matches with Daniel Bryan, with AJ Styles, with Seth Rollins. Why wouldn't he have an amazing match with Finn Balor? I believe, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but Finn Balor was the one that decided to target, or storyline-wise anyway, decided to target the midsection of Brock Lesnar, taking advantage of the in-real-life diverticulitis that took him out of the UFC. That was an amazing... And to make you believe, even for a second, that this guy who reached the highest of highs and got ripped down to the lowest of lows in 24 hours and got stuck with jobber after jobber after jobber after jobber, could potentially be the guy to pull a Seth Rollins and beat the Beast, to be the Beast Slayer. We all knew in the back of our heads that it wasn't going to happen, but the match was good enough, and the two guys in it, Lesnar gets some credit for this too, to make you believe that it could be, made the match really, really good. He lost to Lesnar, but then he turns it around in this voiceover, and we were all like, okay, he's lost to Lesnar, now he's going to go off and do whatever. That's what Lesnar's opponents do. But he sort of takes this promo off in another direction. He says he lost to Lesnar, but Lesnar saved him. Fighting Lesnar at the 2019 Royal Rumble felt like when he fought Joe, when he fought Owens, when he fought Nakamura, when he fought in NXT, and he had to go back to NXT because that's where the real him was, that's where the passion was, and one more time, like he did on the Indies, like he did as Prince Devitt, like he did in NXT, like he did on Raw, like he did at SummerSlam, he had to go back to NXT and prove that he was the best one more time. Now, back to NXT, and he went in with a different attitude. He said it was time to stop pleasing everybody else, time to stop pleasing the publishers and the writers and the creative team and the backstage and the merchandise people and the whatever. He turned on Gargano, and he said it wasn't anything against Gargano personally. He needed to do what was best for him. He went back to NXT as the Prince. It wasn't about Gargano, it was about me. I was doing things that were right for me. Which brings us to TakeOver Portland, and they show us a lot of footage from TakeOver Portland, because the TakeOver Portland stuff led to the Gargano-Ciampa stuff that we spoke about earlier. But he defeated Gargano, and it was good, and he beat him up afterwards, and it was just, I want to beat you, but I also want to hurt you. And then the promo continues after this, because that's basically all there is after this. 2018 Finn died a long time ago. The Prince is back, and these are very, very uncertain times. They didn't mention the current health issues going on in the world. I know you can't mention it by name because you'll get taken down off YouTube. I've seen it happen to other people. But they didn't mention the health issues that are going on in the world right now, the pandemic as it is. But he mentions it here. He says, we're in very uncertain times, and I will stand in the ring with Walter at some point, and I will get what I want from that exchange. There are a lot of other stars in NXT that are just as addicted to this high as I am, and if you want to dance, the Prince is here. Now, he was supposed to fight Walter at TakeOver, which isn't happening now. I don't know. It's a weird one, him and Walter, because it was just getting off the ground. They just had him coming out to talk about what was next for Finn Balor. They just had Marcel Barthel and Fabian Eichner come out on Walter's behalf and give him a bit of a beatdown. We were just about to find out what the actual issue is. We were just about to see those guys go face to face. We were just about to all make our David and Goliath comparisons. I was just about to come out here and remind everybody that Walter kind of looks like Michael Hamflett from What Culture. We had a really, really interesting idea going into TakeOver, and right as all this stuff has happened, we were about to find out what that was. And it's wrestling blue balls once again, because I want to see the match regardless, but I'm almost as curious as to what the story would have actually been. Walter's a champion in another brand. What was his reason to come out and send his boys, obviously, but also ultimately himself, to challenge Finn Balor in another brand, unless it was just another Rhea Ripley situation, which we'll talk about shortly, where it's just like, well, I don't have any competitors over here. Maybe there's some competitors over there. Now, with the issues going on in the world, I hate that we can't just call it by name, but I've had this channel flagged before, and I don't want to give them the reasons to do it again. I don't know what a flag will do because I'm not monetized, but I assume at some point that means they would just take my channel down, which I don't want to do. I would stay in a podcast form at that point, would I not? I don't know what the travel thing is right now. I don't know if Finn Balor is in Ireland, like with his family or whatever. I know Walter is over in UK doing UK things, but as far as I've heard, the UK is pretty shut down as well. But travel from the UK, I don't know how these things work. I don't know how they come together. I'm not watching nearly as much news as I should because it's depressing as fuck. I know there's a lot of travel bans from a lot of places in the UK. I don't know if this show was going on, which it's not, kind of, thankfully. But I get the feeling on at least one, if not both of their parts, that even if TakeOver was happening, this match would not. So we gotta wait a long time to see if we get the showdown between Balor and Walter, or are they just going to come up with something else in the meantime? Or are they just going to... Because they do take a risk. This is sort of going off on a tangent now. They do take a risk every time they feud somebody with NXT with somebody from NXT UK, because as much as nobody watches NXT as much as they watch Raw and SmackDown, the redheaded stepchild of WWE, sort of like on 205 Live levels, is the NXT UK brand. So... I mean, I don't watch NXT UK, but I know enough of the people there to know that some feuds would work, some wouldn't. You run the risk every single time of somebody from NXT UK showing up. It happened with Travis Banks, ironically enough, the only Banks in WWE that matters. When he showed up in NXT for a couple of things before Worlds Collide, I saw a lot of people on Twitter doing what I usually do and saying, like, sort of, who the hell is this guy and why should I care? So when you cross over people from the UK brand to here, I applaud them for it, but it is a little bit of a gamble. I guess they're trying to shed some light on that brand, see who they can bring over, etc. But I don't know if we'll get this match. I don't know if this is one that they'll pick up in a couple months when hopefully the world's back to normal. I hope it is, because I really do think it's an interesting match. I hope it's not just a case. I hope they don't boil it down to something as simple as one of them is fast and one of them is big, because I think both of these guys can work out something better than that. At the beginning of the year, we had TakeOver, what was it? Blackpool 2, I think, where we had Tyler Bate versus Walter. Somebody's going to correct me down in the box below because that's probably wrong. Tyler Bate is another guy who reminds me, like, not character-wise, but in-ring-wise, reminds me a lot of Balor in the sense that he doesn't look like a small guy even when he's facing people much bigger than him, and Balor, character-wise alone, pulls that off as well. So I don't know that this match will still happen. I really hope it does. This reinvention of Balor that is apparently the way Fergal Devitt used to be is really cool. I don't have anything to compare it to because I didn't watch Fergal Devitt on the Indies and in the UK scene. So it's new to me, which is great. I always used to say I don't want to watch people from the Indies when they come to WWE because I want to see how WWE presents them. It's sort of like going to the movies with people who have seen the book and they basically criticize based on that, and I try to avoid that as much as I've opened it up to now. Hey, I've heard this guy's coming to NXT. What can you guys tell me about him? I'm still probably not going to check out the matches. When Ricochet first came to WWE, first came to NXT, I should say, the very first match I saw with Ricochet, and most people know this, was an NXT house show in Toronto shortly before he debuted on the actual TV show. And it was him versus Murphy, and it was great. There was no reason for it. It was a house show, matches for matches' sake. That was a great introduction to me. Everybody's like, you need to go watch Ricochet versus Will Ospreay, but those same people are the ones complaining that, oh, Ricochet's not who he used to be. So why do I want to go and watch something that's going to make me not enjoy him now? It's a conundrum when you talk about Indies versus NXT, NXT versus WWE main roster, etc. But yeah, Balor's good. This was a cool thing. It was sort of jarring, like I say, the way they mixed in. Hey, we're NXT and this is our superstar. And hey, I'm Finn Balor. Let me tell you how awesome I am. Like it was a meld of both, and it was offsetting in the right way because I think he's supposed to be a little unsettling at this point. And yeah, just makes me wish that TakeOver was in 2 weeks, like I said before. And finally, the focus turned to Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair, and Triple H talks about. He goes on, being the proud papa Triple H that he is of NXT, talking about what it means for any NXT title to be represented on WrestleMania, let alone the Women's Championship. I think WWE knows right now that the best thing going on nothing's going on in the company right now, but when the company is standing on its 2 feet again, the best thing in WWE as a whole, the entire umbrella of WWE, the best thing going on in WWE right now is the NXT women's division. And I'm sorry, call me crazy, call me a mark, call me, white knight, call me whatever. I legitimately would not mind if Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair main evented WrestleMania. I really wouldn't. Mostly because I'm a mark for Rhea Ripley, and here's all the reasons why. We did the same rundown with her. We had her narrating her own story, pretty much. Again, it wasn't like the Ciampa Gargano thing where we talked about the history between the two of them, because there isn't as much history. It was a focal point, like we just did on Finn Balor, but we go to the first Mae Young Classic, where she came out pretty generic, generic wrestling gear, slim, very attractive, very able blonde wrestler. Talks about, she wasn't really descript. There wasn't really anything that made her stand out. The one thing she did get sick of really quickly is people comparing her to every other skinny blonde on the roster, like Charlotte, like Toni Storm, like Lana even, which made I cracked. I hope that's a lie. I hope it's a lie that she was compared to Lana. No offense to Lana. She serves her purpose, I guess, which is just to be annoying person at ringside. I don't really see the Toni Storm thing, because Toni Storm always came off with like a bit of her own image. I don't get that. Obviously, tall, slim, fit, athletic, skinny, blonde Charlotte, I get it. But at the same time, not, because by the time the Mae Young Classic came around, people were already developing their, oh my god, Charlotte's the female Roman Reigns. Now, I don't know how you get that compared to somebody who's just just showing up on the Mae Young Classic, and she was good. I remember thinking that she was like, she wasn't one of the ones I had focus on. I did focus on Toni Storm. I did focus on Piper Niven because she was so different. But it was sort of one of those, like, she fought Dakota Kai in one of her matches before I knew who Dakota Kai was either, and not nearly to the level of Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano in the Cruiserweight Classic. But here's two people that I legitimately didn't know that put on a match that really, really got my attention. Now, when the second Mae Young Classic came around, she says it herself, she decided that she was going to make herself stick out. She wasn't just going to be, you know, generic blonde number 5 in the tournament. She came out with that new attitude, the black attire, a lot of the chain type attire that she has. It always reminds me, when I see her, a lot of her wrestling gear, it reminds me of Trip Pants. If any of you were like little like angsty rocker goth people when you were younger like me, you had the Trip Pants, the pants with the big long chains on them, or the chains on the pockets and whatever. I still have a bunch. They're in my closet behind the NXT flag over there somewhere. But she's sort of like, you know, the whole world is my mosh pit, like that kind of thing. She did the hair differently. She's got the shorter hair, weirder makeup, and the one thing they haven't done her any favors with, especially since she's been sort of tap dancing on the main roster a little bit, is they've done really weird things with her makeup, and I know that shouldn't matter, but it does. Whenever she comes out to challenge Charlotte on Raw or get in her face, it makes me think of when they started doing really weird, like, Black Swan-esque makeup on Ronda Rousey, who was just supposed to be like a killer who doesn't need to have like all this red and orange shit on her face. But she really made a statement in the second Mae Young Classic. The second Mae Young Classic, if you go back and look at it now, go back and look at the brackets of the second Mae Young Classic and the current NXT UK women's roster, because they knew they were about to start up the NXT UK show, the NXT UK women's division. Everybody from Piper Niven to Toni Storm to Rhea Ripley to Ela Dawn to Piper Niven, so many of the people in that second Mae Young Classic tournament, and I hope they do another one. I really do. I don't know if we necessarily need another Evolution pay-per-view. Go ahead and hate me down in the comment section below, because we don't. But another Mae Young Classic would be great, and you better believe that I will come up here and cover that shit on this channel. Who won that? That was Toni Storm won that, and that was when I was really high on Toni Storm. If you've ever heard me talk about anything from the Mae Young Classic to the second Mae Young Classic to the NXT UK women's division to eventually the NXT UK women's tournament, whenever I talked about Toni Storm, whenever I talked about Rhea Ripley, I said these two are fucking stars. Anybody else that was underneath them, like I said, I loved Ela Dawn. I wasn't so much a fan of Ginny. I like people like Piper Niven, etc., etc., etc. But here are your stars. Here are your Rock and Austin to start your women's division over in the UK. So very quickly after Toni Storm wins the Mae Young Classic, we have the NXT UK Women's Championship Tournament. The finals came down to Toni Storm versus Rhea Ripley, and Rhea Ripley became the first NXT UK Women's Champ. She goes through everybody. She has a great rivalry with Toni Storm. It's why it's so weird to see her as the badass babyface that she is now, because she was such a good heel on NXT UK. She was just ripping people's legs out of their sockets. It was really good. So to have her, the minute she walked into NXT, immediately be the most over babyface was so fucking weird. I mean, it was good. It spoke to her. It spoke to her. You know, diversity and all those types of things that we say when we're trying to put over our favorite wrestlers. But they go on to say it in this video package, she had faced everybody in NXT UK. It was time to tackle somebody new. She looked over into NXT proper to Shayna Baszler, who had also beaten everybody. And the minute she stepped out I don't even remember how we got around to it, but we had Baszler out there sort of cutting a promo, bragging about how she had literally beaten everybody in the division, and then that music hit, and it was so dissonant, it was so separate, it was so when she came out, you almost didn't realize what it was for those first couple of split seconds, and then you realized what the music was, and then you saw her, and you watch the Full Sail, and yes, the Full Sail crowd is biased. They are there to be part of the hype. But if you watched the audience, if you watched the Full Sail audience, the very first time Rhea Ripley walked into Full Sail and stared down Shayna Baszler, didn't give her a chance to speak, and it was just... And it didn't seem forced, and it didn't seem put on. She says, I know what you're going to say. You're about to stand out here and say that you've beaten absolutely everybody. Well, you haven't beaten me, bitch. And it was perfect. The stare down between the two of them was almost better than any match we could get, because in a stare down, in a first ever face-to-face moment, you have every possibility that could come after that, which is always awesome. And yes, I'm straying into hyperbole. I really like Rhea Ripley. I really like Shayna Baszler, and Toni Storm is one I like as well, but she kind of got left by the wayside, did she not? So they faced off, and the very first time they fought, I don't remember when it was, but it was a schmoz pretty quickly with Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir getting involved and giving her a bit of a beatdown. But their rivalry led into what was probably one of the best weekends for NXT possible, and that was last year's Survivor Series weekend, which started with War Games, capped off with Survivor Series proper. Team Ripley versus Team Baszler, the first ever women's War Games match, with all the drama with Tegan Nox and Dakota Kai and taking out Mia Yim, and the fact that Rhea Ripley and Candice LeRae had to go 2-on-4 and still won that. Rhea Ripley goes on the next night to form her women's team that won on the night as well. So Ripley, her team beats Baszler's team on the Saturday. Ripley's team then goes in again to beat Raw and SmackDown on the Sunday. Baszler caps off the night as the most dominant of the three women's champions in WWE. They are both at their peak. They are both absolutely at their peak. Baszler didn't lose anything by losing the previous night at TakeOver War Games, because she already had like a 2-year title reign backing her up. The fact that, the metaphor always goes, all the broken bodies in her wake. But she really did. She was really indestructible. The fact is that they had to put Ripley over. They had to put Ripley over in that match, A, to make her seem even to Baszler, but B, because she had to go on and captain the NXT team the next night at Survivor Series, because Baszler was doing other champ things. So they were left pretty even at the end of the day. Team NXT won, as we knew they would. Once again, the NXT women's division, if the NXT women had lost, people's opinions on that entire night would have been different, I think. You could have done the War Games match either way, I think, but Ripley really needed a sort of a statement match before getting into her actual match. And Baszler going on to beat Bayley and Becky was just what we needed to cap off the night, just to cap off NXT has arrived. It was the first time that Survivor Series was a triple threat between Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. You really needed NXT to make a statement, much like Ripley had the night before. NXT as a whole had to make a statement the next night. Again, with them leaning so much on their women's division, their women's champ beating the other two women's champs only made sense. Baszler was brand new to a lot of people on that main roster stage. Bayley is lame as fuck, and Becky Lynch, I still love her, but the bloom was starting to come off of that rose as well for a lot of people. Everything made sense. Team Ripley winning, Team NXT winning, Baszler winning in the main event, and the fact that that was the main event also was pretty fucking amazing. You could not have set these two up any better. And then we came to NXT on December 18th, and it was weird because looking across the way at AEW, they built up a huge show on that. And I'm not saying this to be facetious. I legitimately don't remember what was on that show that particular Wednesday night, but they had built up a pretty wicked show on the 18th. NXT built up a pretty wicked show on the 18th because it was their last show of the year. They did their pre-tape show the following week, which featured the debut of my girl Shotzi Blackheart, which is another story for another time. I'm a little bit heartbroken with where she's going right now, but to counter whatever the big show was for AEW that I legitimately can't. Was that when Jericho fought Jungle Boy? Was that what that was? I mean, was there also a tag team title match on there? Because that's what AEW does. AEW does tag teams. But bottom line, this is where Ripley beat Baszler for the title. Ripley beat Baszler in the main event in front of that Full Sail crowd, and everybody flooded the ring. Everybody filled the ring. It was the main event, and she crowd surfed. You know, the Mosh Pit Kid, as they talked about her, she crowd surfed on the backs of so many NXT superstars and so many of the NXT universe, as much as I hate that phrase. The photos from that night are incredible, and when I reviewed that show that night, the task of picking what picture I was going to use for my thumbnail was enough of a task. That was a really, really cool night, and the fact that they didn't do it on a takeover, the fact that they just did it on the main roster show, the fact that they picked those two women to compete on that big night against whatever AEW had to offer was really, really cool. I was, up until the night, I was wondering, why didn't they save this for a takeover? Why didn't they save this for the takeover leading into the Royal Rumble, for example, which wasn't a takeover, that was Worlds Collide, but whatever, we don't need to talk about that right now. But this was one of those scenarios where it was really cool that they just made it part of the weekly show. It was the main event. Now, keep in mind, this was the main event, even though the opening contest for the NXT title was Adam Cole versus Finn Balor. And these ladies still got to main event that show. This was huge. The moment was perfect for Rhea Ripley. It was great, and she rode that wave of momentum right into 2020, where Charlotte Flair wins the Royal Rumble. And everybody, even me initially, got really, really mad, because going into the Royal Rumble, what did we think? We thought the same thing Rhea Ripley thought when she looked at Shayna Baszler. Shayna Baszler has nothing left to do in NXT. Now, doesn't mean that we wanted her to go to the main roster, because everybody dies on the main roster, but there was nothing else for her to do, so it was logical. It was predictable, but it was predictable in the way that's okay, because we knew it was going to happen. It's not like Roman Reigns beating your favorite person. It's Shayna Baszler is going to win because it makes sense, and also she's the one we want to win. And it got down to her and Charlotte Flair, and I don't know. The ending of the Women's Rumble this year was awkward. I'm not gonna lie. They did that whole, like, where she had her by the ankles and they couldn't quite work out how she was getting her over and all that sort of thing. And Baszler didn't win. Charlotte Flair won, which on the surface means, oh, look, they just gave Charlotte another win. This would have been a cool way, I'm not gonna lie, for Shayna Baszler to get to where she is now, where she's, you know, taking a bite out of Becky Lynch, and she's got her title match at WrestleMania, even though WrestleMania is going to be weird and in the Performance Center, it's fine. But you give away a little to get something great, because NXT, the NXT Women's Division, the NXT Women's Championship, and Rhea Ripley herself are all going to get to be a part of WrestleMania because you gave Charlotte that win. If Shayna Baszler had won, she could have gone on to face Rhea Ripley again, and you could play off the story that, oh my god, the Royal Rumble winner chose the NXT Championship. But guess what? Technically, Shayna Baszler was still an NXT superstar. So if she used her Royal Rumble win to get an NXT Women's Championship match, it still would have taken place at TakeOver, which would have been fine, and it would have been great, and it would have been a great rematch from their thing on NXT. But Charlotte Flair winning it, Charlotte Flair winning the Rumble and presenting herself as the hateable entity that Rhea Ripley is going to climb over to get herself a WrestleMania moment is more layered, and it makes more sense in the long run if you really think about it. And I'm not trying to say if you really think about it like I'm smarter than anybody, or like anybody that disagrees with that is dumb, because if you're absolutely not. If you were cheering for Baszler to win, then yeah, you're bummed that she lost. I was bummed that she lost, but I think we got more out of Charlotte's win And I don't think it's going to do anything for Charlotte. All it's going to do is give Rhea Ripley a chance to show off the NXT Championship at WrestleMania. Now that's happening in an empty arena at the Performance Center, which makes me cry a little inside, but it still is how we got there. Ripley shows up on Raw because Charlotte is teasing everybody that she's not going to tell, who am I going to face? Becky? Am I going to face Bayley? And they're both, I'm sorry, they're both really uninspired choices. Charlotte versus Becky, we've done it to death. It said it in this promo. Rhea Ripley said it in her voiceover. Charlotte versus Bayley, we've seen it. Charlotte versus Becky, we've seen it to death. How about something different? How about you face me? You've never faced me before. It's very, very much how she approached Shayna Baszler in NXT, the way she approached Charlotte Flair, except that when she was confronting Shayna Baszler, she wanted the title. When she was confronting Charlotte, she was doing it with the authority of being a champion. And it's like, you have a golden ticket, I dare you to use it on me. And Charlotte didn't answer her. And Ripley chased that challenge. She chased it on Raw. She chased it on NXT. She talked shit on Raw until Charlotte showed up on NXT. And then, for reasons, at Portland, Bianca Belair got another title shot. Why? Because it's February. That's the only time I'm going to say that. So Ripley disposes of Belair, because of course she does. We have the post-match assault by Charlotte Flair, and she finally accepts the challenge, obviously, for WrestleMania. And this sort of caps off, because we haven't really seen anything after this, with Rhea Ripley talking about, you know what, we've changed the venue, the world's changed, the world's in a different spot right now. We're not going to be in Charlotte's world. We're not going to be in the huge bombastic stadium, even though Rhea Ripley cut a promo from that stadium a couple weeks ago. We're going to be in my world. We're going to be in the PC. There's going to be nobody to woo back when Charlotte woos. The only person there when she woos is going to be me, and I'm walking out of WrestleMania with my WrestleMania moment and my NXT championship. And again, I don't know how to say this. I talked about, at the beginning of this video, I talked about Gargano and Ciampa leading me up to a match that I'm really, really glad has been postponed. We've got Finn Balor building himself up, hopefully to the match with Walter, but mostly building himself up, and that's going to happen whenever it happens. It's sad in a different way, because this is building up to what, for all intents and purposes, should be an amazing match and an amazing moment, but it's tempered by the fact that that amazing match and that amazing moment is going to happen in front of nobody. And there's something really sad about that, because you're never going to recreate, Rhea Ripley is never going to recreate her first WrestleMania. NXT is never going to recreate the first time an NXT title has been defended on WWE, or on WrestleMania. The women's division especially is not going to recreate the first time that title has been defended at WrestleMania. It's very, very strange to say that I don't want this match, that I want really bad. I don't know. And that's basically it. That's what this entire show was. This is what the entire show last week was, highlighting Gargano, highlighting Balor and Ciampa and Rhea Ripley, and how we all got to WrestleMania weekend, which is not at all gonna look like any WrestleMania weekend that we have ever seen before. And it's oddly sad. That's it. I don't really know how to sign this off, because this won't be the end of the video. In 2 nights, I'm going to watch this week's NXT, and that's going to be the next thing you see after this next jump cut. So I'm not going to do my whole subscribe up there, talk down there, blah, 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 like I normally do. I'm going to say, hold on just a second, and we'll talk about this week's NXT. And welcome back one more time to the second half of this weird NXT double bill that I'm trying to pull off here and try to look somewhat stylish while I am doing it. Thank you for those of you that are watching, those of you that are especially watching on the live premiere. I know this is way longer than the content that I usually do, but it is indeed March 25th. We are here to talk about the March 25th edition of NXT, because we did we did get an actual episode of NXT this week, and I will say, from a couple of days ago, what I said and all the hoopla that went into it. It was a video package show, and it gave me a chance to talk about everything that we just talked about. But oh my god, especially after seeing week after week after week of Raw and SmackDown at the Performance Center, which it feels like, even though it's only been like 2, it was really nice to be back in Full Sail. There was a homecoming feel to it, and it's like everything that's going on in wrestling right now. It's like everything that's going on in the world right now. Everything that's awesome is also a bit sad. So we're back in Full Sail, which feels great. It feels great even though there's no crowd. It felt great even though we didn't have Morrow, we didn't have Nigel, we didn't have Beth Phoenix. We had Byron Saxton and Tom Phillips, which is fine. It's good. It's okay. And I mean, they're like everybody else. They're just going where they're told to go. Obviously, you know, if Nigel's over in the UK, I guess, would be my assumption, although they didn't say anything. Mauro Ranallo, we all know it's public, and he makes it very public that he's got the mental health issues that he deals with. So I imagine that the times that we're living in are really hard for him. I don't take anything away from that whatsoever, other than I miss having him on my TV screen. And Beth Phoenix, you know, for all we know, could be with Edge at the Performance Center while he prepares for his match, or however you want to play that off. Or maybe she's at home with their kids, because it's a scary time. I really don't know. Tom Phillips, Byron Saxton did what they could in the interim, and we started off with them just voicing over as we got ready for the first match. The stuff that was announced on Sports Illustrated, the stuff that was announced on WWE.com, which was really a punch in the gut. When we got the announcement that WrestleMania was going to be brought to the Performance Center, and we all thought, oh my god, how weird is that going to look? And we spread it out over 2 days. We're going to have WrestleMania in a gym in front of nobody. The shining light of all that was that TakeOver had been canceled, pretty much, because TakeOver and NXT rely on their fan base more than the WWE does. WWE makes a sport of pissing the fans off and inspiring 105,000 people to sound like there's nobody in the building with some of the choices that they make. NXT is really, really tapped into its audience, and the NXT audience really likes being the NXT audience. I'm going to be bringing that flag. When we get all this shit done and over with, I'm bringing that flag with me to the next show that I go to, whether it's an NXT show or not. That's the kind of fans that NXT has, and I really thought it was awesome. You know what? We're going to spread WrestleMania over 2 nights. There goes TakeOver. TakeOver gets put on hold. Some of the great matches that we were looking forward to at TakeOver can take place at a later date, especially when you consider people like Pete Dunne and Walter, who are on the other side of the world, who probably won't be traveling and would have to be substituted with somebody else, which would just be lame at the end of the day. And or you could have matches like they've added to WrestleMania, like Aleister Black and Bobby Lashley, for reasons. But no, it's we're going to retire this TakeOver and sell it for parts, is basically what they're doing. They're taking most of the anticipated main events of that show, other than the Tag Team Championship match, which I'll talk about later, and we're spreading it out over the next couple of weeks of NXT, which is cool in a way, because it means every single match on that card will get to be a main event. So that is cool, but let's not delude ourselves into thinking that means anything, in the sense of we're going to spread out. Not only do we have like the sadness, and I do call it a genuine sadness, of a pay-per-view playing out in front of nobody, we're going to watch a pay-per-view play out in front of nobody over the course of like a month and a half. That's really a bummer. I am loath on this channel in this review to give credit to AEW. AEW had a pay-per-view level Wednesday night show lined up for tonight's show. I haven't watched tonight's AEW. You guys know the drill. Watch NXT, review NXT, then watch AEW. But I know that they were set to do Blood and Guts, you know, their terrible ripoff of NXT's War Games. And they've put it off until they can do it in front of a crowd, because they know that makes sense. I will say, and it's something I'm going to say more than once, the other thing I will give to AEW is when all this shit is over and we can fill up those arenas again and we can put on a show again, there is going to be a cathartic moment in the wrestling fandom the first time Jericho comes out, because that instance of the entire arena singing Judas. Whether I like AEW or not, whether I, you know, like I say, want to wave my NXT flag, something like the whole crowd singing Judas once there's a crowd again is going to be very important. And I'm not saying that to be super melodramatic or anything like that. It's just true. It's I will say, the first time we get a live audience again and Adam Cole comes out and they do the baby thing is going to be cathartic. The first time Daniel Bryan comes back out and we get the yes chants. The first time some dumbass heel comes out and they get the what chant treatment or something like that. It's going to be cathartic. And I think as wrestling fans, and I'm not going to venture too much onto this because I do plan on doing a separate video on it, possibly with an awesome co-host. But it's going to be important, and I think crowds at wrestling shows are gonna hold on to it a little tighter, if that makes sense. But this wasn't the move, in my opinion. You guys know NXT is my brand, so I hold them to a higher standard, so I hold their mistakes to a higher standard, and taking a pay-per-view that could have been saved, could have been put off, could have been like... They could have saved this takeover, and I know they would have had to put it on hold, but it could have been the first live event to come after, and I always make the comparison to, and I shouldn't, because I'm not American, and I don't know what it was like on that day way back when, but SmackDown live, starting with that Vince McMahon speech after the 9/11 attacks, and I don't mention that lightly, please don't get me wrong, but it was the first step to, okay, we got to start getting together, we got to start living our lives again, whatever. WWE could have taken something like that takeover, because WrestleMania was going to get scrutinized anyway. There's a lot of bullshit on it. We don't know what a boneyard match is. But the NXT takeover brand is something that, you know, unless there's an AEW pay-per-view going on at the same time, it's something that pretty much everybody can gather around like a nice warm wrestling fire. You could have held that off, and it could have been the first pay-per-view after the events of the world, as we have to call it, because, you know, if you mention it by name, you get your videos taken down, and it could have been a real gathering thing. And for them to just spread it out over several weeks of no audience shows is terrible. In my opinion, it really, really is. But that we got the I guess in a sense we got the bad news out of the way right away. We jumped into our first match, which was good. Austin Theory taking on Tyler Breeze. Tyler Breeze is sort of in the Dolph Ziggler role at the moment of making everybody else look good. You knew what was going to happen here, except it didn't happen, which is strange. Austin Theory came out carrying a cell phone to the ring, you know, mocking the Prince Pretty gimmick, except he had the phone stuck in the back of his pants. So what he's done is he's taken Tyler Breeze's gimmick and stuck it up his ass, which I don't know if that's the intended symbolism, but that's definitely how it came off. Collar and elbow type, and Theory pins Breeze against the ropes with an attack. Lots and lots of trash talk from Theory. A collar and elbow type. Breeze works the head and works it into a headlock takeover. Reverse headlock by Theory and a dropkick by Breeze. Breeze fakes a super kick and hits him with a running forearm instead. A boot, a running blockbuster by Theory, and some reverse lariats. A snap suplex by Theory. An arm and a neck vice. Crossface choke with a post in the back of the kneecap in the back of the neck, which was interesting, because it almost looked like he was putting him down into a position for something like a Steiner recliner, but it wasn't. It was just this weird choke that he did, but he emphasized the choke with a kneecap in the back of the head, and I just like, he's good, and his facials are really good, and he took every moment he could, knowing that there was no audience to drown him out, to get as much trash talk in as possible. He's very aware of the camera. I really tip my hat to Austin Theory. I mean, Tyler Breeze is there giving him those moments to do that, because he is... I don't know what makes up an NXT veteran, but Tyler Breeze is definitely an NXT veteran, and he's basically given the kid time to shine. And I shouldn't say kid, because that's derogatory, but whatever. Jawbreaker by Breeze and a dropkick by Theory as we go into the commercial break. We didn't have much picture-in-picture. I wonder why. Oh, because the first non-televised SmackDown had some leaked footage where the women in the match during the commercial break just stopped wrestling. Now, on the one hand, that's ridiculous because you interrupt the flow even if there isn't any people in front of you, but why would you? Why would you fall on your back even once if nobody's watching? I don't mind that at all. So we didn't have anything going through the commercial break, which is fine. It gave me a chance to do laundry, I'm not going to lie. Series of kicks by Breeze and a drop kick and 2 forearms as we come back from the commercial break. Tilt-a-whirl, sit-out, powerbomb by Theory. I don't even know how he did this because the guy was spinning and then the guy was flat on his back and I couldn't tell you what he does in between. Running toss into the rail by Theory and a boot into the midsection. Powerbomb by Theory that gets countered into a roll-up attempt by Breeze. A knee strike, a buckle bomb by Theory. The buckle bomb, obviously, because Seth Rollins has had some, unfortunate history with that maneuver, the buckle bomb will always get my attention nowadays because there's just so much moving that happens in that move. Supermodel kick by Breeze and Insiguri from the apron. Ushigoroshi by Theory. Mounted punches. Theory cuts a promo into his phone because he thinks he's got the match won. He goes to do his finishing move, the ATL, which I think is fucking great. It's like the Austin Theory method or something. He goes to do the ATL, got him over the shoulders with the phone still in his hand, which is a great touch, but, pride cometh before a fall. Breeze is able to counter. He hits the beauty shot. Breeze gets the win, picks up the phone, and finishes the promo into Austin Theory's phone. I hope they revisit this. I hope this turns into a little mini feud because Breeze made Theory look really, really good in this match, especially for no audience. Killian Dane comes out, right? Killian Dane. I like Killian Dane, but who's he going after? He's going after Tahuti Miles. Now, who the fuck is Tahuti Miles? I think I put on social media there, Tahuti who? For anybody that gets that message or that reference, hit it up down in the comment section below. Hit it up on the chat. I'm probably there watching with you right now. The commentators absolutely scramble to tell us who this guy is. Don't let his suave, debonair presentation fool you. He's got a shirt on, and the shirt is definitely over like some army print. What do you call them? Coveralls, overalls. They go through his wrestling. They don't go through his wrestling history. They go through his military history because nobody knows who this guy is as a wrestler, and you can't denote that somebody's got a army history without putting him out there in camouflage printed wrestling gear at least once. He gets mauled in the corner by Why? Why does my computer do this while I'm talking? He gets mauled in the corner by Dane and corner spears by Miles. A crossbody by Miles gets caught and he gets tossed across the ring by Dane. Pump kick out of the ring by Dane into the steps and into the railing. Body shots by Miles. Knee strike in a mud hole by Dane. Back suplex by Dane. More body shot. Every time Miles gets a little bit of space between, he keeps on trying to go into this series of body shots, and every single time Killian Dane sells them like he's a mosquito that kind of got in the way. Boot by Miles. Dane eats the post shoulder first. Drop kick by Miles, but a wasteland senton combination followed by the Vader bomb gets the win for Killian Dane. If he's a jobber, then cool. If this was his debut, I feel really bad. Now, I gave AEW a bit of credit a while ago for holding off a very important show that they know needed an audience in their blood and guts wannabe War Games match. I will say what they could have held off was the debuts of Brody Lee and Matt Hardy, because them debuting, and I'm trying really hard in these tough times that we're at to not get too confrontational with people that have fandoms differently than mine, because we're not in that time right now. But oh my god, for Brody Lee especially, for somebody who apparently struggled so much with the lack of opportunity in WWE, to go and get this opportunity where he's going to shine, to have him debut in Daly's place with no audience, and the bigger the place is, the bigger the bigger the lack of audience is. Like a small absent crowd in Full Sail is not the same as a large absent crowd in Daly's place. Now, they did a cool thing. Again, I'm giving them credit because I'm a nice guy. The whole idea of having other wrestlers in the front row of Daly's place. I mean, you had Sean Spears and somebody else, or yeah, Sean Spears and somebody else, and they were gambling on the matches, and then you had, Dusty out there in full red and black face paint for reasons. You had Colt Cabana, who's a bit of a knob, but that was really cool the way they played that off. But it was just like two friends shouting at each other across a gym, and it wore thin pretty quickly. It was like the first SmackDown from the PC. For one night, that could have been really cool. For one night, if this was just some experiment that they were doing randomly, and it's like, we threw this like variety show together. The awe and spectacle of an empty arena as a novelty for one night could have been cool. People tuned in to that SmackDown for no other reason than to see what it would look like. I'm thoroughly convinced of that. But But yeah, the Daily's Place thing, I fully believe, and again, I'm going to be getting into this in more detail later on. I fully believe that the absence of crowd and the effects of everything that's going on right now in the wrestling context didn't hit us until last Wednesday, because people are already going into a Monday Night Raw ready to make fun of it because there's so much apparently stupid shit going on. Same thing with SmackDown. So they're laughing at Raw, they're laughing at SmackDown, whatever. When it came to Wednesday, I think that's when everybody got a little bit of a gut punch. Now, whether you were looking forward to AEW, whether you were looking forward to NXT, like myself, I didn't watch NXT last week because I didn't realize at the time that it was just going to be a clip show. But I didn't want to watch it because, like, okay, wrestling's kind of shutting down everywhere, but now that's my wrestling. That's my show. I don't want to see that happen to my show. And I think everybody collectively, unless you are really, really, really casual and only watch Raw and SmackDown, I think the rest of the wrestling world took a really big punch last Wednesday, right in the gut. So I hope that brings us all together, and I do not know how I got off on that tangent whatsoever. Killian Dane got the win. Oh yeah, I was going into debuts and whatnot. People anticipated Matt Hardy and his debut, and that happened in front of nobody. Brody Lee happened in front of nobody. If this guy, Tahiti Miles, I'm gonna get wrecked in the comment section for that. If this was his actual debut and we're supposed to take him seriously, then it ain't the move. That's all I'm saying. Cameron Grimes versus Tony Nese, I'm not going to talk about, because even when I gave a shit about 205 Live, I didn't give a shit about Tony Nese, and you guys all know at this point what I feel about Cameron Grimes. I do not care. What I do want to do instead, I want to take an example or an opportunity to talk about the commentary here. Byron Saxton, Tom Phillips. I just said, they were doing the best with what they got. They got put in where they were told to go. Couple different things that happened in this particular match that absolutely drove me nuts. They talk forever about 205 Live and how Tony Nese is the standard bearer on 205 Live. Nobody watches 205 Live in the slightest. So that didn't really work. Tony Nese hasn't been on NXT like forever, so it should have just been a squash. They started talking about, they talked about Tony Nese winning the Cruiserweight Championship at WrestleMania, and then they transitioned from there to talking about this year's WrestleMania, and they started using the cliche line that they've been using for a couple of weeks now, ever since the announcement was made, of too big for one night. And let me tell you why this pisses me off. With everything that's going on right now, people are getting sick, people can't travel, people can't work, people can't this, people can't that. I'm just about done. And this is not a wrestling thing, this is just a thing in general. I'm just about done with all the effort that it takes to try and put positive spin on it. I'm just about done with, hey, we can't work right now, but hey, we all get to spend more time with our families and da-da-da-da-da, and this is going to really make us appreciate things when we come back. And I know I just did a rant like that at the beginning of this, but I'm really done with WWE. They know that nobody's going to watch an 8-hour empty arena show. That's why they spread it out over 2 nights. They knew they weren't going to do TakeOver. That's why they spread it out over 2 nights. But the way that they're trying to sell this as a positive thing, as a, oh my God, isn't it great that we spread this over 2 nights? It's just going to get, no, you're going to get 2 nights instead of 1 of a really sad, neutered WrestleMania with no audience. So I know they have to sell things. And we all laugh when they do stuff like, Roman Reigns getting booed on the way to the ring. Oh, he's one of the most, opinion-bending people out there. He divides the crowd, except he divides the crowd between the people that are booing him and the people that are louder booing him. And I get that they have to do that. Michael Cole has to, scream out, it's boss time every time we see Trasha Banks. We have to do, all kinds of things. It's the big dog, and we have to do dog stuff, and we have to pretend that that's cool. But this is some real life shit, and it just bothers me. It bothers me that it's happening. It bothers me the effect that it's happening on wrestling. It bothers me that we're gonna see WrestleMania with no crowd. It bothers me that we're not getting TakeOver. It bothers all of us. It bothers me even more to try when you see some marketing committee in some back room at Titan Tower somewhere painting this potential worldwide tragedy and the effects of it as a positive, as a selling point. It's really, maybe I'm on my own with that, but it's really bordering on offensive. I'm just saying. And then they switch back into trying to make Tony Nese sound like a big deal, and they talk about how Tony Nese is a former cruiserweight champion, and then they talk about the weight of Cameron Grimes getting a win over Tony Nese, and Cameron Grimes is trying to get himself into that North American title picture. If he gets a win over a former cruiserweight champion, that'll put him right back in the running. Beating a cruiserweight, a former cruiserweight champion from another brand, is not going to have any effect, or shouldn't have any effect on getting a shot at Keith Lee that you've already gotten. Beating a cruiserweight, a former cruiserweight champion that nobody remembers because that was before NXT came along and saved that title. But beating a former cruiserweight champion will not get you to the pay window of the NXT North American Championship, which is at this point held by a super heavyweight. I'm just saying, Grimes gets the win because of course he does, and we move on. We get a video package. We're supposed to have Xia Li versus Aaliyah next in a contenders match for, to get into the ladder match that's supposed to happen at TakeOver, which isn't happening anymore because TakeOver isn't happening anymore. And I was going to skip this because Xia Li and Aaliyah, Xia Li is great in the ring, but they've never given her anything to do. And I love Aaliyah, my hometown girl, but they haven't really given her anything to do. I have zero reason to care. But they did show us a video from 4 months ago of Xia Li breaking Aaliyah's nose, which was apparently because she was going home to go get a nose job. If you believe it, you believe it. But all it did, and all any flashback does for me at this point, is show me an arena with fans in it. And then we come back to the live show, or sort of live show, where it has no audience. So they're trying to give us a reason why Xia Li versus Aaliyah is exciting. Aaliyah comes out. She's hot as fuck. I don't really care. Xia Li does not come out. She's shown in the back to be injured. All of a sudden, the ring announcer, grabbing at his headpiece really dramatically like he's one of the Avengers, and he announces that, Xia Li can't compete anymore, but you are going to compete against this person instead, and out comes Io Shirai. And I immediately got excited. I mean, like, my girl Aaliyah is about to die, but that's fine. Dropkick in a corner beatdown by Shirai, running knees, a takedown by Aaliyah, and a little bit of a mudhole stomp and an uppercut by Shirai. Butterfly backbreaker suplex by Shirai, followed by the signature moonsault, gets the win for Shirai. And away we go. Shirai goes into the ladder match, which we're going to talk about later on. We have a really messy promo segment. I thought we were going into TakeOver to get Keith Lee versus Damian Priest, which was the match that I wanted because I'm sick of Dominik Dijakovic. But what did we get? We have Keith Lee coming out a couple of weeks ago addressing the post-match assault that happened after his match with Grimes. See, Grimes already had his title shot. He can fuck off now. Dijak already has his title shot. He should also fuck off by now. But he addresses the misunderstanding when Priest attacked him, but he thought it was Dijak, so he attacked Dijak, and Dijak comes out and he gives him his apology, and he doesn't care about the apology. He wants another title shot, da-da-da-da-da. I thought you respected me more than that. Priest comes out mocking both of them, and he says, you know what, I don't care about the prestige. I don't care about how much that title means to you. I care that title is going to get me money, fame, women, and prestige. And Keith Lee just looks at both of them and does the champ is here, but he says, you're talking a lot. You're talking a lot. The champ's right here. He drops his belt. They're going to go. But, Priest comes into the ring, and Dijak pushes Lee out of the way, so he's going to do something, and then Lee pushes himself back in, and Priest and I don't know why I'm tripping on my words there. Priest and Lee get into a situation where they're brawling up the ramp, which is fine and wonderful. Dijak does what he does. He hits a suicide dive, so we have our tick box, big guy did a little guy move moment of the evening with Dijak. Dijak knocks them both out, and he leaves them both laying, and gee, I wonder what's going to happen. The big Adam Cole, longest reigning NXT champion ever of all time, baby, celebration didn't really happen. We got a selfie promo from him on vacation at poolside and talking about how I'm the first ever guy. I was the first ever War Games winner. I was the first ever North American champion. And I'm also the longest reigning champion in NXT. That's not a first time thing. So it sort of broke up the continuity of the promo that he was trying to cut. Dream has done absolutely nothing to deserve a title shot, but we all would like to get our hands on him. How about you take on one of my guys, Bobby Fish, next week? So that was the ever and overhyped championship celebration of Adam Cole, was him dropping a selfie from his pool. I like Adam Cole, and for what this was, he did it really well, but this was a misfire, I'm not going to lie. Lorcan and Birch take on Shane Thorne and Brandon Vink, and if you're like me, for the second time this evening, you're saying, who the fuck is Brandon Vink? Brandon Vink and Shane Thorne were extra bodies for the Street Profits on Monday Night Raw, and they talk on commentary about how Brandon Vink and Shane Thorne have been on Raw and on NXT this week. Isn't that awesome? So they've performed in front of two different empty buildings. There's not much to say here, and much like the other match that I skipped over before, I'm gonna not talk about matches that I don't care about. Lorcan and Birch are great. They are hard-hitting. They are a team that should be up there with the Riddle and Pete Dunnes, with the Grizzled Young Veterans, and they're just not. They're always there to be like the other team, or the team that you're facing when you're trying to get ready for something else. They should be in the title picture, and they're not. Shane Thorne, not Dominik Dijakovic, should be the next one going after Keith Lee and that championship. He doesn't just... Nick Miller went home, like, I think a year and a half ago now, to, like, go do family shit, and this was Shane Thorne's chance to really go out on his own. I had said multiple times in multiple reviews that they missed a switch by just not naming him the mighty Shane Thorne. I mean, yes, in retrospect, people could make the mighty Thor jokes, and that's fine. Lorcan and Birch get the win here. Nobody in this match is doing what they should be doing. I don't know who the fuck Brandon Vink is, other than Shane's just called another one of his Australian friends. Like, they're all interchangeable, which is sort of like Aussie racist, but that's another story for another day. Lorcan and Birch deserve to be way farther up the card. I know Lorcan also does cruiserweight stuff, so I don't know what we're doing. I really don't know what we're doing right now. Great match. Like I say, other than Brandon Vink, who I don't know enough about, there's three guys in this match that I really like, and none of them are doing what I want them to be doing, which is kind of sad. What's not sad is Candice LeRae versus Caden Carter, because I like Candice LeRae, I like Caden Carter. I had an idea of where this was going to go, but it was still a good match nonetheless, because they were pulling out a lot of people for this ladder match that's no longer taking place at TakeOver, that you wouldn't expect. I didn't see like Chelsea Green getting in there over my girl Shotzi Blackheart, but we'll get to that at a later time as well. Collar and elbow tie up and a headlock takedown by LeRae, front slam by Carter, shoulder tackle by LeRae, and an arm drag overhead arm drag snap by Carter, single leg trip, pin reversal sequence, springboard basement dropkick by Carter, a back elbow snapmare and a snapmare by LeRae, clotheslines by Carter, modified haluva kick by Carter up against the bottom rope in the center, whereas you would normally see the haluva kick hit somebody around the area of the top rope, or you would see like a broski boot hitting them in the bottom. This was against sort of like dead center of the bottom rope. It was a little bit different. It wasn't setting the world on fire, but it was kind of nice. Chops and shots by LeRae, a step-up senton by LeRae, and the Gargano escape. The first time she tries the Gargano escape, the commentators didn't know what to call it, so they're like, oh, she's using the Gargano family escape. I don't, like, just use, like, say the LeRae escape, or maybe have her use her own maneuver. I don't really know. Candice LeRae wins. I have no problem with this. I'm taking the piss out of it a little bit. For the unpredictability factor of it, I would have loved to see Caden Carter get thrown into the ladder match, but that sort of is what it is. We got Candice LeRae, we got Mia Yim, we got Io Shirai, we got Tegan Knox, we got Chelsea Green for reasons, and one more person to be nominated later, and that match is going to take place in 2 weeks. And what else is going to take place in 2 weeks? We'll talk about that later as well. Riddle versus Strong. Now, I should have so much to say about this match, and I have the notes, but it's a whole lot of, I won't lie to you guys, like, it's the bottom of that page, and it's the top of that page of my notes, you know, peek behind the curtain if you care. But it's a lot of, he did this, You know, it's like all my rundowns are, but like I have a harder time in matches that are really ground, like almost amateur wrestling based, because I have even more harder time than usual describing shit. Bro Derek by Riddle did get the win. They did do an okay, classy job on commentary explaining why Riddle isn't there with backup, because Pete Dunne obviously is stuck on the other side of the world, like Walter, maybe like Finn Balor, for all I know. Finn Balor's from Ireland. He could be over there right now. I'm not his travel agent. Moving on. But they did put out the idea there that Riddle was on his own, which I thought was going to lead into like a double, triple team scenario, but Strong was also out there on his own. I mean, we sort of addressed it with Adam Cole doing his selfie video saying he was on vacation. But they really did lean hard on the fact that Riddle was there on his own, not so much on the fact that Strong was there on his own, because pointing out that somebody is sort of fighting on their own is really a babyface thing at the end of the day. But Riddle gets the win. Strong kind of fucks off. I don't know what a win would have done for Strong, because he's not one of the tag... I know the tag team titles have been held with all the different combinations of members of Undisputed Era. I get that. But now that they're all four there in full strength, the tag team is Fish and O'Reilly. So I don't know what a win for Strong would have done, but we don't have to know, because that's not where the story is going. The story is going, Riddle wins. Riddle then gets accosted by two big dudes that are foreign. Yay. And then a guy comes out who I also don't know, says his name is Malcolm Bivens, and he says, you know, it's time that I know your partner's not here, he's on the other side of the world because of the way the world is, and rah-de-rah-de-rah, you want to see the future of the division, here's the future of the division, and never tells us who they are. He gets his own name out there, which is awesome. That's a Zelina Vega move right there. Doesn't bother naming the team. Doesn't bother. And this was pre-taped, so you could have done this again. They didn't, you know, it's Bob and Steve, the Wreckers, or like, So, a lot. Brandon Vink, who the fuck are you? Tahuti Miles, who? These guys, who? I'm hoping they're jobbers. I'm hoping everybody introduced tonight is a jobber, because if this is your legitimate introduction to NXT, sorry, not a dig. This is about as bad as what AEW did with Matt Hardy and Brody Lee. And those guys have the benefit, because of WWE, of people already knowing who they are. I struggle, guys. You guys know I love NXT. I'm happy to see it back. I'm happy to be, you know, artificially in Full Sail with all the people that we like. But I gotta be critical, or else I'm an asshole, so here we go. Next week, we got a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff that I really like. Fish versus Dream, okay. Interesting, not a combination I would have particularly thrown together. We have a second chance women's match. I don't know whether it's a battle royal or like an elimination style match, but it is the last... It's for the 6th spot in the ladder match that's happening in 2 weeks. Now, I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count as to who you think I want to see win this. Because Caden Carter is in there, Xia Li is in there, Aaliyah is in there, whoever lost the other matches that I can't remember off the top of my head anymore, is in there. But they are going to join Chelsea Green, Mia Yim, Candice LeRae, names are escaping me now. You guys know who's in there. So the winner of that match is going to go on and be the 6th person in the ladder match the following week. The winner of that ladder match is going to face whoever the winner of Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley is. It is long-term storytelling. It's just really formulaic, and I don't know what to think about that, because I've said it a million times, and I say it at least once every review, that the NXT women's division is something we can beat AEW over the head with. But in the way things are right now, it doesn't have that, because they're building to something that's happening on a WWE show with Charlotte and Rhea Ripley. So it sort of seems aimless a little bit, and never mind the fact that it's happening in front of no audience because of what's going on in the world. Everything's kind of on hold. Everything's on... We're doing stuff to say that we've done stuff. We're doing stuff because we want something to watch. We're doing stuff because they obviously have TV contracts that they need to fill. We're doing stuff because wrestlers need/want to work. But that aside, it does feel like the wrestling world is very on pause. And the last thing we're going to get next week is the triple threat match that I don't care about because I don't care about Dijak, and it's Keith Lee versus Dominik Dijakovic versus Damian Priest. Damian Priest should win. I would love this to happen in front of an audience. I'm going to caveat everything with this. Here's who I want to win. I wish it was happening in front of an audience. Damian Priest should win. He should, you know, he should hold that title and be a dick for as long as we're all in quarantine. And the first time we're in front of an audience again, Keith Lee can squash him and have a big happy fan moment to welcome us back to the era of wrestling with an audience. Is that cool? Damian Priest is the guy that I like, but let him be the dickhead that holds that title all the time. Nobody's there to see it, and he gets all he's had his crowning moment, but nobody saw it, so he can be all bitter and just walk around full sail in the performance center being an asshole. And then when the audience is there, the audience is obviously going to have Keith Lee's back. They can do the Judas thing, they can do the bask in his glory thing, and that'll be good. That'll be another cathartic, bring the fans back together moment, and Keith Lee can walk in 30 seconds and squash the guy. I really don't care, but we need to do something in the meantime. But what do we have in the main event? We had the guys on commentary throwing to Triple H in the ring, who was about to start talking about Gargano and Ciampa, but Ciampa joins him in the ring. Ciampa cutting off Triple H is really like old lion, young lion. When you see them go face to face, it's really good. He says everything that needs to be said has been said, everything that needs to be done has been done. Johnny's here, why don't you just bring him out? Triple H calls him out. Johnny, practicing his social distancing, also being a coward, stays at his distance, complains about the fine, talks about how everything in the performance center in that brawl that was actually broken was broken by Tommaso Ciampa, which is like a half decent point. And Triple H goes on a very long-winded but very well done. Everybody says that Triple H is kind of like the dad of NXT, and I really don't want to see that because that's really condescending to both Gargano and Ciampa, which is the feud that we just finished talking about in the previous section of this video. But he really does come down to them and is like, talking about the way things are in the world right now. You guys need each other more than you realize. There's things outside of wrestling with the way the world is right now. It'll really make you start thinking about something like that eventually. But while you're here, we can't have you doing this. Gargano cuts him off a couple of times, and Ciampa cuts him off a couple of times, and he does point out, hey, William Regal wanted to fire both of you. You guys are only still here because I talked him out of doing that, which was the only thing I can sort of say as far as, Triple H is going to put himself over in this promo. It's like, well, he did it in the right way. I'm not saying he didn't do it, but he did it in the right way. And he starts saying, this feud needs to end. It deserves a big stage. We're going to do it in a really important spot. And both of them look at him and say, look, we don't need a big stage. Just give us a ring. And I thought that was really kind of on the nose because that's how all the shows are going to be right now. And Triple H literally says that everybody thought that he was going towards this loser leaves NXT thing, and everything he said made it sound like that's where they were going, but he never actually said it, so I don't know if that's actually the stipulation. But he says, I'm gonna find a building. I'm gonna find an empty building, and I'm gonna throw a ring in it. I'm gonna give you a referee, maybe a couple of cameramen, so that we can see what happens. I'm gonna text you both with a location. You go there, you fight, you figure your shit out, and then it's over. After that match is over, we're gonna know who's the better man. And if you guys still have issues after that, then neither of you, are going to be in NXT anymore. Everything about that sounds like a loser leaves NXT match, but they never actually said it, which was a little bit infuriating. You could tell they were doing everything they could to tap dance around the words, loser leaves town was the thing they did back in the territory days when some guy was going over to the next territory, when Hogan was going out and Flair was coming in or whatever. I'm not going to pretend that I watched any territory stuff because I didn't. I hear about stuff like that from much more educated people like Connor, like Greg, Joe, Jake. Those guys will be able to talk to you about that. I don't know. And the last thing we saw was that glitchy entrance thing that's apparently for Killer Cross. I still need you guys to tell me down in the box below why I should be excited about Killer Cross, because I still don't know, other than apparently he's got a really hot wife / valet, which is nice. But they did the little glitchy thing on the screen, and then it just cut to black. And it got me interested in one way, right? Because obviously this guy's showing up soon, because it wasn't just showing up on our TVs as something we're not going to even acknowledge, like they're doing on SmackDown with the little Iron Man thing that's supposed to be Ali or something, I don't really know. But what it did was, once again, it leads me to believe that this guy, whether it's Killer Kross, whether it's somebody else, is going to get involved in that Gargano-Ciampa match, which means we're still at the end of this match, where they're going to fight in a warehouse or a field or on the Hardy compound, copyright, that we're still not going to have it, because this guy's going to come in and fuck it up. So we're going to drag the Johnny Gargano and Ciampa thing out even longer, and we're still not going to have a final resolute result. Kind of sounds redundant, but so is that what they're gonna do? Is this the guy that they needed? Are they gonna introduce him as a referee? Is it gonna be like, hey, Ciampa and Gargano, you guys can't handle just any ref? Are they gonna bring him in like Ken Shamrock style from way back in the day, when they brought Ken Shamrock in to referee matches? I don't want that to be the case at all. I want it to be generic referee number 5, generic cameraman number 12, generic location 6, and just do it. And I would market it as an empty arena match if we weren't all fighting in empty arenas right now, because the nuance of that takes you back to something like Foley and The Rock in the Halftime Heat empty arena thing, which, as I say, would be a really neat concept if we weren't doing that every week on Raw, SmackDown, AEW, NXT already. The idea that, you know what, you guys are a danger to Full Sail, we're sending you out there to fix your shit, would be good if the things that are happening in this world right now were not happening. That was the end of the show. I am excited to be back home at Full Sail, even if there's no audience, even if we didn't have Morrow and Nigel and Beth, even if there's a lot of decisions on this show and a lot of... Because they're working with what wrestlers are there. We're working on how many people you can get in the building at the same time. So I'm really trying not to be too critical. They are trying to give us a show. They are trying to give us that escapism, that entertainment, that distraction from what's going on in the world around us. So it's I feel like a dick criticizing what I don't agree with, but I still have to come up here and be somewhat honest with you guys. I'm happy that I had a show to come up here and talk about this week. I'm happy that I had a chance to come up here and talk to you guys. By now, you will have watched me talk for about 2 hours, so thank you for hanging in with that. People that are watching on the live stream, you guys are badass. I am glad to be back. I will resume regular NXT reviews, especially considering they're spreading out all our NXT TakeOver matches over the next couple of weeks. I do have some things lined up. I know I always say this. I have the good fortune to work with a lot of cool co-hosts on here to do a lot of additional sort of collab content. There is some stuff that I hope to be doing with OKFabe coming out sometime in the next couple of days. There is some stuff that I've been waiting for a long time to do with Guapo that I hope to get out in the next couple of days. There are some topics still left over from the time before this time that Jake DeMarco and I wanted to knock out, so hopefully we'll get that out of the way as well. Also, I hope to get him back on here to talk about some more NXT related stuff. I do want to flip the script a little bit, talk about the wrestling community a little bit. There are people out there that are doing far more than me. Check out guys like Joe Cronin, who is his shit's way more constant than mine. Go show some love to Jake DeMarco. We all know anybody that's paid attention on Twitter. He's gone through a lot of medical stuff recently, and he's on the mend. And I've had a chance to talk to him a little bit, but I'm sure he could use all of our love. Cresta Star on Twitter is a content creator that I find incredibly entertaining just on Twitter, doing like live reaction stuff, and I know she's her family's been hit by this in some way, shape, or form. It was briefly mentioned on Twitter tonight, so go follow Cresta Star on Twitter, send her some love, send some love to my buddy OKFabe, because he was the last collaborator that I had on this channel before all this crap went down. We were talking about the Elimination Chamber, and back then we thought the Elimination Chamber was the worst thing that was going to happen to us. send some love out to, even though this is an NXT review, send some love out to my AEW guy, Guapo, at Guapo_504. He's a good dude. Hope to have him back on soon. And yeah, send some love out to Black Cat Feline, even though I know she's not watching wrestling right now. She's still very much a part of the family on this channel, so go show her some love too. I'm hoping to convince her to come and do some movie-related stuff on the channel soon, because we did have fun doing that, even when wrestling like fell over and took a shit on itself. Rambling a whole bunch. To anybody out there right now that's struggling with all the stuff that's going on right now, the community, especially the community on Twitter, is coming together surprisingly well. Wrestling fans, and especially the YWC, the community on Twitter, we do like to bite each other's heads off, but I myself have been trying, and I know a lot of other people have been trying to really sort of pull the wrestling fan community up by its bootstraps, because, you know what? The fact that AEW is not quite as good as NXT is not what's important right now. What's important, you know, not everybody has wicked collaborators like I do, like the people I've just mentioned. But if you do, if you have some friends out there on social media that are your wrestling friends, check in on your wrestling friends. Even if they're not sick, you know, the effects of this are going to last long after we're all okay again. And we're all going to be a little fucked up in the head before it's over. So check in on the people around you. Do all your safe stuff. If you need somebody to vent to, Spaz Phoenix 1 on Twitter, my DMs are open as far as I know. If you're not having such a good day, you want to reach out to somebody. People are out there. And the one silver lining about all this is it's a worldwide thing, so nobody's gonna listen to you vent and think you're exaggerating. Nobody's gonna listen to you vent and not know where you're coming from in some way, shape, or form. If you think people are having a bad day, check on them. If you're having a bad day, say it. Somebody will check in on you. Like, the world is not as shitty as we think it is sometimes, but we are in some pretty shitty times, and all the things that would normally distract us from these shitty times have been taken out by these shitty times, and wrestling's only one of those, and it'll come back. And we will get through this, and we'll just be a little bit more fucked up in the head for it. Anyways, I'm just talking bullshit now. You guys know me. You guys know I love you. I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there. Talk down there. Start a conversation. Keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I'll talk to each and every last one of you later. I hope you're all doing okay, and I'm tagging out. Bye.